Okay, so today I'm going to be replacing the rag joint on my 1997 Camaro convertible. And I'll show you the symptoms and then I'll walk you through what I did to replace it. Here's the car in prep, so we want to elevate the front of the car. Getting to the rag joint, you're going to want to need access from both the top and the bottom, so I've got this up on ramps here. And what the rag joint is a piece of fiber and rubber that is on the steering column that comes in from the firewall. So here's the steering column that comes in from the firewall. It has a joint, universal joint, and then it's a bit hard to see underneath the headers here. But what there is there's a joint down in there, right in there, that is made out of rubber and fiber, and then it connects to the steering gear underneath that. And what happens, particularly on these cars with headers, is the heat from the headers deteriorates the rag joint, and you end up getting a lot of play in your steering. So what you'll see in the steering wheel is you can basically move the steering wheel. This one doesn't have a whole lot of play, maybe 5 degrees, but that's pretty scary when you're going down the road, especially at freeway speed, and you have to move the wheel this much to make any small adjustments. So we're gonna go ahead and fix that. We're gonna need the headers to be cool. We don't want to burn ourselves on these, so I've got the car up on ramps. I'm going to run to the hardware store to get a few more materials that we're going to need, and I'll come back after that and show you what we have. Okay, I'm back from the hardware store, and this is what we have to do the job. So we've got, first we need 11mm socket. So I've got my socket set out and I've got an extension. These are pretty hard to get to, so that's going to help. I've got the replacement part here, which is an aluminum piece from Unbalanced Engineering, and the kit also comes with some grade 8 bolts that we're going to need to fasten it back on. The existing one is riveted on, and we're going to need a hacksaw to get that off, and I also got a new blade for my hacksaw. The old piece is pretty rusted, so I got some engine enamel. We're gonna spray it with that. Also got my Chilton's manual. Probably won't need it, but it's always a good reference to have. One thing I forgot to pick up was some Loctite for the threads on these. We don't want these things coming loose while we're driving and steering, so I may have to make a run back to the store. But we have our pieces. The engine's cooled off. I did a side project. I fixed my plastic shift boot here with a metal clip I got on eBay. These other plastic ones, they break pretty easily, so I went ahead and changed that while we were waiting for the headers to cool, and ran to the store. It should be cooled now, so let's see if we can get this piece off. Okay, I want to give an update on where I'm at, how this is going. So both the bolts were really tight. The bottom one I was able to get out with a little bit of extra persuasion, some leverage on my ratchet, and I was able to get that one out. The top one took a little bit more persuasion. I did spray it with WD-40 on both sides, and then eventually I was able to get that to come out. Once I got both the bolts out, the piece was still solidly in place. I was able to use my rubber mallet and a crowbar to sort of pound the bottom piece off from the steering gear. This top piece doesn't really have a good way to get a hold of it to pry it off, so I'm sort of working on a way to get that off right now, but I will come back with an update on how I did eventually get it off. Okay, as you can see, I was able to get this piece off the car. A couple different approaches that worked. First, I hit this with some WD-40. I don't know the wisdom of that. It's pretty close to the headers, and WD-40 is pretty flammable. So hopefully I don't have any kind of fire issues, but I'm going to try to wipe it down and clean it up as much as I can. That didn't really help. It turns out the best angle to get to this, so this is the top piece here, this goes in the steering column, this is the bottom, this goes in the steering gear. From the bottom of the car can come in from the cat, where the left cat attaches to the engine. I was able to hit here and actually pry this off from underneath the car, so that was the best angle. From the top I couldn't really get on anything. Also, I did take my pry bar and try to pry this slit apart to loosen it. That may have contributed a little bit, but it was still super tight. So anyways, I wanted to show, now that I have this off the car, this is so worn that if I hold one side with my foot, I can just kind of see the movement I can do on it just with my hand. So I hope you can see it. It's quite a bit of movement. So, okay, now I'm going to put this in a vise and see if I can cut it apart. Okay, here's the piece after it's been hacksawed apart. Just a regular hacksaw like this does the work. It's takes a little bit of elbow grease, but I was able to do it. I did break a blade while I was cutting, so you may want to have an extra blade ready just in case that happens. Also, I wasn't aware this has a center shaft, and you can see I nearly cut all the way through that center shaft, so be careful of that. I guess all you really have to do is cut these 4 rivets, and the rubber piece will just fall out. Here it is. So this just can slide off once you get those 4 rivets cut. So be careful of that. Hopefully that's not going to be a big deal. I didn't cut all the way through, but I'm going to leave it that way. The other thing is, this is important that this only lines up one way. So what I did, I don't know if you can see it, is I put 4 notches here, 4 notches here, and then on each side I did 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way around, so I know what side lines up to which side. And I'm taking this video in case I can't tell later. I'm going to try to paint this, and then I'll take a break, put it back together, and try to put it in the car. Alright. Okay, sorry for the shadows, but here's the painted piece. Turns out the rivets on these pieces, the bigger pieces, were a little bit harder to get out. These little ones fell out, no problem. I had to take a grinder, grind the pieces off, and punch those out. Now I've gone ahead and painted, taking care to keep these oriented in the proper direction. I'm going to let this paint set get some lunch, and I will check back in about 1 hour. Okay, so I finished putting the rag joint replacement in, and I just took the car for a test drive. I just want to give a follow-up on what the last installation piece was. So actually, it turns out that you don't want to use these little brackets that were on the old one. They're not needed. I reread the rag joint replacement documentation, and it said just toss those. I took those off. I put all the bolts in one direction, and you can see even with my headers I had plenty of clearance there, so no issues. I'm not sure how well you can see it, but it's quite a ways down there. But I put all the bolts in one direction. Getting the shaft back on was almost as difficult as getting it off. It's a very tight fit. So there's one tip you can do is slide the top on first, and when the top's on you can actually hammer it from here on. Get it on just far enough that you can put the bolt in and then screw that in, and then when you have the bottom top on, then you can put the bottom on and you can actually hammer that down from here. The bottom has to go all the way down. There's a groove on the place where it sets that has to be all the way down so the bolt can go through. So put the top on first, put a bolt in, then hammer the bottom down, and that should slide out, and then put the bolt in there. So like I said, I just took it for a test drive, and it's 100% better, 1000% better than it was before. The steering is almost too tight now. I mean, it's any movement in the wheel does move the steering. So whereas before, it was scary loose. So anyways, highly recommended. It did take me quite a bit of time to do this. I had to run to the store a few times. I did use thread locker. There's the thread locker red. You want to use red because of the heat. But let's see, it's about 6 o'clock. I started this morning, so it's an all-day thing. If you haven't done it before, so don't be fooled, but definitely worth it. All right.